Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with a midweek update in the world of cannabis. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. We're going to start with some local news sites citing record-breaking sales in states, which we love to see. So firstly, coming out of New Mexico, October brings new high for New Mexico cannabis sales, another one of the markets that recently launched in April of this year. Unfortunately, like in the early days of any market, we are still seeing continued growth, which is great. As rec sales in October passed 25 million, according to data from the Cannabis Control Division, setting a new record. The latest data from the state shows that the 507 dispensaries across New Mexico made a total of 875,504 transactions, and among those, retailers sold 25 million, more than 25 million worth of rec cannabis. Since legal sales began in April, New Mexico has approached but never broken the 25 million rec sales mark, and in September they sold 24.2 million, just short of it, but August was also bought a little over 24 million. So they were close, but finally got there. So more on this if you wanted to pause to read, but love to share that update out of New Mexico. Well, we got this one from Missouri, which is medical only, and of course big news we'll get to in a moment, but Missouri set sales record as cannabis sales for medical break $500 million at 2-year anniversary of retail sales. As Missouri also set a new record in October, helping retail revenue grow 3% from the month prior. And so with record monthly sales of 35.36 million in medical cannabis sales in October, the monthly sales average for the whole year of 2022 climbs up to 31.44 million. Sales have grown month over month for the fourth consecutive month after a brief slide in May and June, which followed a historic April, as cumulative cannabis sales for the program rise to over $500 million, reaching $529.5 million at the end of October. So love to see that. And of course, Missouri is one of these states that was voting on the ballot yesterday. And so happy to report, not there yet, but this quick one from Todd Harrison before we get into some snippets from MJ Biz Daily, just highlighting that new adult use cannabis markets could be worth more than $1.5 billion on the ballot. That is, if everything goes as planned, I would assume possibly. But voters in Arkansas, Maryland, Missouri, and North Dakota and South Dakota will vote on whether to establish new rec markets that could generate $1.7 billion in new sales in their first year. So that's 1.7 or 1.5 billion is talking about the first year in as many of those states' cumulative sales as possible, pending if they ended up voting for it. And so we did get the results in, and while we didn't end up getting the full blowout, we did get the two best states that we wanted, and ultimately that is the most important thing because they represent a much larger population in Maryland and Missouri than Arkansas, South Dakota, and North Dakota. And so thank you, Denis, Rudev, for sharing this one from Cowen. A quick update: green wave hits the wall. But nonetheless, sort of the best case scenario for us cannabis investors, as we were expecting Missouri and Maryland to at least pass. And again, those have larger populations, so obviously can get legal cannabis to more people, safer access to a non-addictive medicine, and help drive sales in legal markets once they launch. And so you can pause to read for a bit more about the results. But yeah, I don't know what the people in Arkansas, South Dakota, and North Dakota were thinking. That sucks. Clearly, the benefits of ending prohibition are pretty clear, and they speak for themselves at this point in time. Unfortunately, they still don't see it, and therefore they're not going to get the benefits. But congrats to you in Maryland and Missouri who voted for cannabis, and you will be getting it. Another victory in this election for cannabis. So you can pause to read a bit more on just every state. The source for this info is Politico.com, and then U.S. Census Bureau and Cowen and Company. So you can pause to read, or you can grab the link below. And so while the situation is still developing, just sharing some pieces of information that I think is going to be relevant, because I don't think we're going to know necessarily the final outcome of the Senate and the House until a bit later, but it's 9 a.m. as of Wednesday right now. Regardless, some news from Punchbowl on the U.S. election from Todd Harrison saying that the Senate control hinges on Georgia and Nevada. And so whether this is true or not, just sharing a bit of information highlighting what we might be able to expect in the coming days as the election finishes up and all the votes get counted. But so you can pause to read if you find this relevant at all and if you're interested. While moving on to this one, we got this news yesterday as Tom Engel shared the House Oversight Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties just announced a hearing for next week titled Developments in State Cannabis Laws and Bipartisan Cannabis Reforms at the Federal Level. And while this does sound positive, and we'd very much like it to be the case, just wanted to share this as this was unexpected. Could be big news, sounds kind of big, but more on this next week as we get more information on that. But the link will be below if you wanted to check that out as well. Well, we got this one from Denis Rudev sharing, so thank you, Denis. Congress will hold a cannabis hearing 1 week after 5 states vote on legalization ballot measures. I think it might be a lot of the same information in that that previous article from Marijuana Moment, but it's the same sort of news, just from a different source, one from Tom Engel in Marijuana Moment, one from Denis Rudev as well. And so I just wanted to share this if you wanted to pause to read and find out a little bit more about what they might be doing on that meeting. But yeah, we'll have to wait till next week and cross that bridge when we come to it. But with that, Jesse Redmond sharing a bit more Cowen on how the House and Senate results may impact the cannabis industry. And so as well, always take these with a grain of salt because no one actually knows. But if you just wanted to read and see what Cowen has to say, these could be the, for cannabis, we break our assessment down to the 3 likely election outcomes and what they could all mean. So Republicans win House and Senate. Pause to read if you'd like. Republicans win the House. Dems keep the Senate. And pause to read. And then Democrats win House and Senate. And then on to this last one. So Trash Panda Capital, thank you for sharing this one. Bernstein on U.S. cannabis MSOs, an investment firm that I don't reference as often just because it doesn't get shared or doesn't come across my way. But never have we seen such a large and fast-growing market completely ignored by institutional investors. I'm glad that you see that as well, Bernstein. It's been the case for quite a while now, and you just have to think that there might be something behind this. But good that more people are realizing this. Legal weed spend will probably be as big as wine in a few years, but institutional investors can invest because cannabis is still a Schedule 1. And so, obviously, been through this all, but massive opportunity here. You can pause to read for more information, but also just wanted to share this interesting snippet down here. As U.S. cannabis is really a fascinating regulatory market structure puzzle. That it is. That's why I'm reporting on it and because I love the plant. But there are a half dozen MSOs in the $500 million revenue range, growing double digits with 25% plus margins. And obviously, they would be growing better if state regulators prove to be a little less competent, for example, launching New Jersey sooner than later, but at the same time, operating as best as they can with both hands tied behind their backs with 280E. So it's pretty impressive. You got to give them some credit when you put all those factors into consideration. Yet everyone is trading at a less than 10x EBITDA in the pink slips due to the regulatory overhang. And so yes, this scenario, the situation is fascinating. You have to think at some point it's going to get resolved because it's just been ludicrous for so long. And so U.S. MSOs are meaningfully larger than Canadian LPs and also significantly more profitable. So just an interesting graphic here from Bernstein Analysis. If you want to check it out, link will be below. And with that, Curaleaf shares their third quarter 2022 results. So just going to go through the highlights quickly, but third quarter 2022 revenue of $340 million, an increase of 1% sequentially and 7% year over year. And while I definitely would have thought that New Jersey would offset a little bit more growth, maybe in other areas they had to compensate, and that's why it's only 1% sequential. Regardless, it does highlight that the demand for legal cannabis is still very real and Americans will vote with their dollars. Third quarter 2022 adjusted EBITDA of $84 million, an increase of 18% year over year, and they generated $60 million in positive operating cash flow in the third quarter and $71 million in the first 9 months of 2022. So that's at least a positive coming from them, although they did see their margins drop a little bit under 50%, which is not ideal. Another net loss as well, but cost of expanding early while you have both hands tied behind your backs. A few other things just to highlight, or just to share, these third quarter operating highlights, just so that you don't have to grab the link necessarily. You can pause to read for third quarter operating highlights, and then you can pause to read for post third quarter operating highlights. But one main thing that I wanted to show you is just the breakdown of revenue for retail and wholesale, as it is interesting just to see how, Curaleaf and other companies are adapting over time. And we can see, compared to June 30th last quarter to this quarter, retail revenue at least did jump from $251 million to $259 million, while their wholesale revenue dropped a big amount though. So from 84.4 to 78.9, especially compared to this time last year where they did $92 million in wholesale revenue. And so could it just be a very difficult wholesale environment for all the MSOs, or is this just Curaleaf's way of focusing more on retail and trying to capitalize on growth from New Jersey and focusing less on wholesale for the time being? Obviously don't know, but it does make me wonder how Cresco is going to fare and if they're going to have some of the same issues. But nonetheless, number of retail stores, they added 2 stores and essentially made $8 million more from that, and wholesale accounts, they lost about 175 it seems. And so not sure, obviously we're gonna have to wait and see how time plays out, but I still think they're in a great position at some point to turn the wholesale back up if they need to. So just a matter of, legal outlets to sell that wholesale to, and obviously supply the demand legally better than the illicit market. But with that, Sayshu Metacharla shares his Q3 2022 earnings takeaway from Curaleaf. And so as Sayshu definitely has a lot more at least understanding and background knowledge in finance than I do, I'm happy to let him dive into the bigger details and share what he thinks is more important. At least I think he'll do a better job than I can. So you can pause to read for some of his takeaways. So you can pause to read from 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And then you can pause to read from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 11. And so thank you again, Sayshu, for sharing this with us so that we can kind of pick your brain and see what you're thinking about this. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. You can pause to read. And then last two snippets and a little PS down here. And so with that, just wanted to share Canopy Growth's second quarter 2023 financial results for a good laugh as well. And so you can pause to read to see what Canopy is trying to do to hold on for dear life and save this struggling cash-burning entity. But the funny part, second quarter fiscal 2023 financial summary compared to second quarter full year 2022 a year ago. And so this is all in Canadian dollars, not even USD. Net revenue decreased 10% year over year for $117.9 million. Pathetic, Canopy. Gosh, that's so unfortunate. Gross margin percentage 3%, adjusted gross margin percentage just 10%, and then so a net loss for this quarter of $231.9 million, which I do believe though represents 1,320% better than what they lost last year at this time. And so, I mean, I could be reading that wrong. Do let me know in the comments if I'm getting that wrong, but an improvement from last year, but still a lot of money to be burning and losing. Unfortunately, adjusted EBITDA, or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, of negative $78.1 million, which is, again, seems to be 52% better than last year. Still awful. And then free cash flow generated from operations, nada. They lost $135.4 million, which is a 34% worse than last year at this quarter, I believe, at this time. And so that's all I'm going to do for this one. Just that is what happens when you bite off way more than you can chew, overpromise, and way under-deliver. And so with that, just wanted to share this interview from CNBC's Fast Money. With 5 states voting on cannabis legalization measures today, Curaleaf CEO Boris says he sees strong bipartisan agreement on cannabis legislation following a record-breaking quarter for his company. And so hopefully some of what he has said will come true. As he highlights, there's a lot of bipartisan work going on, and of course, if we don't solve the problem of safe and having the difficulties for the companies, they just continue. And so at some point they do need to be solved. And while he did, this was from yesterday, and so while some of what he says might not have come true based on some of the election results, I just wanted to play this clip.
In terms of the elections, obviously there's control of Congress is at play, and then there's also these 5 states voting on recreational marijuana. Which elections will impact your business more?
Well, I think both are very impactful. I think we're going to get at least 4 of those 5 states that will approve adult use cannabis. That'll bring us to 23 states. If all 5 states, it'll be 24 states. Basically, almost 50% of the country states will have access to adult use cannabis, and 40 states in the whole.
And so while it sounds positive, we only got 2. And so technically, I believe that's 21 states now that will legalize for adult use, up from 19.
Country with medical or adult use. And as far as the Congress goes, I personally believe that whichever way this goes, whether it's a split between the House and the Senate, or whether the Republicans sweep, the Safe Banking Act is making huge progress right now with the bipartisan support for both Republicans and Democrats. We're as confident as we've ever been that we're as close as we've ever been to getting fundamental legislation around the industry.
In terms of those 4 states that will legalize marijuana, how impactful is that for you in terms of revenue?
Well, for two of those states, Curaleaf is a big player. In Maryland, we have about a 15% share in that market. So that going adult use will obviously be quite substantial. North Dakota, a much smaller state, but we have a 50% market share there. That going adult use will have a less of an impact, but still nonetheless quite substantial for the overall business. And these days, every state that's added does add growth to our business, especially with New York and Connecticut likely to go live next year.
How do you navigate, though, what faces any other business out there, and that is, rising input costs, rising energy costs, rising labor costs in terms of margins, Boris, and also, potential just recession, a potential, deeper slowdown in the economy?
So we are definitely feeling a little bit of an impact. We did have a record quarter. We just announced yesterday we did $340 million. We're up 1% sequentially on last quarter and 7% year on year. Our margins,
considering everyone is feeling it, you got to give kudos to them. That's impressive.
We're up, 220 basis points over last year, and so we're feeling quite good as an industry. Our industry is quite resilient. But what we're seeing is that customers are coming in more often, and they're tending to buy slightly cheaper products than they were last year. And so we're definitely feeling it at this point, but it's not as profound as other industries. Cannabis is becoming a stable product, a product that customers want, and what they're doing is they're just trading down to a slightly cheaper product at the moment.
In terms of...
Oh, and yeah, thank you for that, Boris, as well. Always your wisdom is appreciated. And so a few more stories just to highlight. Tilray is buying Mantuck Brewing Company, adding to its beer alcohol portfolio. The company also owns Sweetwater Brewing Company, so just a funny highlight that no price disclosed on the deal, unfortunately, but yeah, Tilray claims to be a cannabis company, essentially an alcohol and beverage company, though, and distribution company in Germany, identifying as a cannabis company at this point in time, as cannabis makes up, I think, the smallest portion of their revenue, or I don't know if that's true. I mean, I'm sort of just joking around with that, but funny nonetheless, as it seems to be all they can really do at the moment. So last few stories to share. Just wanted to share this one from Brady Cobb, highlighting the shit show that is the New York cannabis industry right now due to regulatory and political incompetence. But there may be some good news. As NewYorkUpstate.com reports, New York cancels its search for a bank to take on its $200 million cannabis fund, because what bank in their right mind is going to take on that risk and try out a $200 million social equity experiment that sounds nice, but in practice likely won't work out the way that the people planning it want it to work out. And so while this is still speculation, I just wanted to share this little bit because Brady's take on the fact that no banks want to do this fund, and so that makes the odds more likely that SAFE is going to pass because Chuck Schumer and New York couldn't get, free money that they wanted. And so Joe Greisler responding to Ronnie, if the red wave and Schumer loses, why would he pass SAFE? Come on, Ronnie. The Dem social equity programs need banking restrictions lifted prior to new businesses opening their doors. And so you would think if they could get this, they might not need to pass SAFE. But since they can't get this, did you see that New York State had to cancel the Cannabis Bank RFP, which they thought they were going to get? SAFE has got to pass because this doesn't go through. Now, again, that's still speculation. Let me know in the comments what you think, but this could be big news and positive news for New York, hopefully helping get SAFE passed and helping the industry sooner than later get going. And so with that, MJ Biz Daily just sharing this new story, as apparently cannabis cultivators across the U.S. are reporting this year's fall harvest, known in the industry as Croptober, that it produced a stellar crop thanks to favorable growing conditions and little to no adverse weather events. And so hopefully that does mean a large harvest at hopefully as little cost as possible to these cultivators, and hopefully that could mean a bit more price stability in Q3 and Q4 as we battle the illicit market, or the illicit product that usually comes out of California during this time. As we might not have known or just didn't expect how much the illicit market would affect the prices of the legal market, especially in Q4 and Q1 as opposed to Q3 and Q4. But regardless, more on the story if you wanted to read through it about cannabis growers reporting a bumper harvest amid overproduction and low prices. And so last one, Air Wellness, cannabis remains a staple at this year's holiday table. A new survey from Air shows that 70% of respondents purchasing cannabis for the holidays are buying enough to share with friends and family. So at least good news that people are turning to a possibly more constructive substance over the holidays. And so Air did this survey with Suzy, a global market research platform, conducted a survey with U.S. cannabis consumers for Thanksgiving that indicated 24% of respondents will spend $100 or more on cannabis, 34% are likely to serve THC-infused food, nice, and 65% will choose cannabis over alcohol for their Thanksgiving celebrations. I think that will have a net positive impact overall. What do you think? The nationally representative study conducted in October 2022 surveyed more than 1,600 Americans on their cannabis consumption habits, beliefs, and purchasing patterns tied to the holidays and Thanksgiving. Findings suggest that cannabis is no longer a mere luxury, a little luxury, but rather a consumer staple that Americans are willing to spend regularly on. While Americans are feeling the stress of a tighter holiday budget due to rising inflation, cannabis spending is on the rise. Still, fortunately, which is impressive considering the environment for all other businesses, of respondents who say they'd purchase cannabis, 2 out of 3 said that they will purchase the same amount as usual during the holidays, and 24% say that they will spend more on cannabis this year. On average, cannabis consumers anticipate spending $112 during the holiday event overall. And so some more information that was, I guess, pulled out of this poll: cannabis shopping and Thanksgiving. Not going to go through it all, but you can pause to read. And then there's a little bit more, so for this next bit, you can pause to read as well. And so while the week plays itself out and the uncertainty continues, hopefully we might get some surprise from Schmuck Schumer, but I will be back on Sunday, and hopefully we'll get some more information by then and have some definitive results that will help us paint a clearer picture of what we might expect in the coming months. And that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I'll catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody.